All right, June 4th, 2015. Can't believe we're still here at this late date, but Sid Marques here, myself, Ray Craig. Sid started in the signal department in 1947, right here in San Luis.
Right up there at the palm trees.
God, amazing. I remember that big old signal building.
Yeah.
And I started in August 20th, 1959. And then when they, in '64, when they eliminated the firemen, I was one of them that got kicked out. I took my severance pay and used that to open up that Shell station down there at the corner of Broad and South.
Yep.
And then it wasn't even 2 years later, old Lance Prodfit, the road foreman, he comes driving in one day and he says, "Raymond," you know how he thought, "Raymond, you want your job back?" And I said, "Hell yeah." He said, "Well, be in San Francisco next Monday morning." So I caught Sunday afternoon, I caught the SF merchandise, rode the freight train up there and got back in '67, and then I worked here in engine service till I got promoted in '71 as an engineer, and then in '86 I went over to Amtrak.
Yeah.
Worked there for 16 more years, and that was it.
Didn't you go to work on that second time with Prodfit's son and those three guys that all went together? Prodfit's son and
that was Dick Prodfit,
yeah.
and Dick Prodfit and Don Lessie, and who else they used to run?
One other, yeah.
I forget those guys.
Yeah.
They were, I think those guys hired out in '53 or '54.
Yeah.
And I was in '59, so they had a lot more seniority. But but anyway, so we got a list of stuff that we're just going to talk about here and try to jog our memory. See
this semaphore signals, I helped set the ones up at Cal Poly Ranch at
up there by Tartaglia's up there?
No, Swanton Pacific.
Oh, Swanton Pacific up there. Okay.
And they come out of Livermore. Those signals, they disappeared overnight.
It's amazing how that happens.
Yes, and we had a division engineer with us, so we weren't scared. So yeah, and they're up there. They're in working conditions at.
Still.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I never have been up there.
Oh yeah.
No, never have. No.
Yeah, I was involved quite a bit with that there, and that the roundhouse, they didn't have no switch indicators, and so we got some switch indicators for up there.
The ones that are on the ground, switch point indicators. Yeah. Now those switch point indicators, they had them on the ground wherever they had a spring switch out on the main line, and so if you were flagging signals, the way the rules were, if you come up on a red signal, and then right ahead of it, you'd have the spring switch with a switch point indicator would probably be red.
Correct.
In later years, I think they changed it to where whenever you were flagging a red signal, whether it had a switch indicator or not on the ground, you always had to throw it back and forth to make sure the
points worked. A lot of times rocks would get caught in there and hold it open just so to indicate that something's wrong with the switch. And sometimes during the summer when it was hot, you engineers would sand the switches too much. Put the sanders on them.
You're exactly right, and I admit that I probably use more sand than anybody out there because it was a great tool, especially like when you're starting a heavy train at the east end of Conception coming west around that curve, and you got to have the sand. You're going uphill and around that curve, and
time when we had the outfit cars parked right there at the east end of Conception, and they had a pretty heavy train evidently, and they come up right at the frog and start spinning back about 4 or 5 times.
Oh.
Finally, one of the guys in that bunk car, he come out and he said, "Oh, you guys wait." He said, "Back up to Sakatti and make a run at it."
So actually, while we're talking about that, you probably owe me some money from the overtime that you.
Oh.
Huh? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But any more stories about those semaphore signals? I mean, you had them around here, I'm
yeah,
sure.
well, when I was working here, we had semaphore signals, and the one that really would catch my mind is right there at Pismo Beach. You're going southbound, and where the down where the overhead is now, and they used to have a big one there, and we used to always call that the mail stop because the mail train used to stop there, and a lot of guys go on the highway. Somebody and says, "Hey, something wrong with that signal? It's up." Well, the train was unloading mail, so that really stuck. And there's further up. I don't know if it was there when you were there. Had that dummy slow signal before you got to the bridge at Tiber. Not Tiber, just south of Tiber.
No, those are all gone.
They had that kind of that 10-degree curve. They had a trap. No, I don't. A lot of guys call it a trap, but they had it there. If the train went over that too fast, that signal hold you, stop.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the old timers deal there. The Pismo, the one there just west of the bridge in Price Canyon. That's the only one I remember, because I used to have to clean the commentators on the old signals.
Now, there used to be a hoghead that lived down there along the creek. You remember that on coming west, just after you get over that bridge at Tiber, make that little right-hand curve, and then he lived down there. I don't know, he was some kind of a hermit.
Yeah. Was he the old guy that used to make the chairs out of the willows?
I kind of thought might have been Jack LeBoon. You remember?
Yeah, I remember him, yeah.
Jack.
Yeah.
And I got a great picture of Jack and my dad on a switch engine right here in San Luis, standing in front of it. But
mention old pictures of, you probably got one, of all of the old-time engineers and brakemen out of San Luis Terminal.
Yeah,
Jim McIntyre made up, Jim and I don't know who else, but they made up I got a whole book about that thick of.
Really, because a lot of those guys, when I hired out in '59, they were still working. You know, like Johnny Bello and Huey Taft and of course, who?
Estes.
Oh yeah, Estes and Elk Mala and a lot of those guys. But going back up to the car markers, were you in charge of keeping those things maintained along with the signals, or no?
No. I've got the car markers was made of tin with the light background on the engines.
Yeah, those are mileposts. Yeah. Milepost numbers.
Yeah, mileposts.
But the car markers were on the poles. They were.
Yeah, every mile.
Well, at the end of every siding, on each end, leaving there, you'd come upon a white band around a pole, and that would mean you were 25 cars.
50, 175.
75 and 100, yeah. So when you got out to, if you knew the length of your train, and so your engineer would know when to start pinching them down, because in those days we had no radio early on.
Yeah.
And so you'd pinch them down.
We came along when they spaced signals. Well, we used to have a supervisor. He says, "Now, you guys walk it from the point of the old marker to where you're going to put it." And he says, "I'll put it in my book of rules." That's how close he was. And a lot of times you're maybe 10 or 20 cars out, but
Yeah, those mileposts were way off.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to check your speedometer, and some miles would be the regular length.
Yeah.
Next mile might be only 4,500 feet long.
Yeah,
or something.
that's because they come along.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I was on, when we were respacing, I was on the old Coast Signal gang, and they had some gangs come out of San Jose up there. Especially one guy, a poor old guy, is Jack Charlton. He says, I don't care about this country. He says, my sister lives in San Luis, and he says, I never did like that place. So he was at San Jose bunch. At that time, we had, on the Coast Division, we had 5 construction gangs.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays it's totally different.
Then when they come in on the signals, we used to have to dig the hole and pour the cement. Well, now they come in pieces. So that was a big save of time.
Yeah. But anyway, on those car markers, they were at the end of each siding, the west end and the east end, and that way, when you were, after you'd met the train that you had orders for, you'd heading out 10 miles an hour in the sidings, and you'd like to do 10 wherever you could, but you'd want to, the engineer would pinch it down so that when the caboose got close to the switch, the brakeman could jump off and line back.
And jump on if he could.
And sometimes if you didn't make it, then of course the conductor had a air valve back there on the caboose. He could kind of give him a little reduction there, and that would, of course, the hoghead, he would be looking up at his gauges. He'd see the air being played with, and he could slow down and make sure. But then, when all that was done, and you probably put out a few fires over the years, throw a fuse up in the air, and that was a highball. Everybody would be looking back, because we'd had no radios.
No radios.
See a fuse up in the air, then you could take off. So how about the rules car? You remember that?
The rules car, yes.
Used to park it right here. Right here.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. Did they come by yearly, wasn't it?
Yeah, yearly. Yeah. Rules come out. Because in the middle of the years, I could remember my supervisor. He says he was in on a investigation about the rules car, and they had it and got a crew in there, and that engineer was quite concerned about it. The old-time conductor, he pulled his cigar out of his mouth and spit on the floor, and he says, well, that rule has been changed, but they've never notified us, because the new book of rules was not yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was crazy.
That's why they made the book of rules with the holes in it, so you could pull pages and put them back in.
Yeah, things are much better. And so the test signals, you were involved in a lot of tests.
Yes, yeah. And a lot of, I have to admit, a lot of sneak tests. They told us to keep our mouths shut, and they'd strictly go against the ICC rules.
Yeah.
Pull a globe out of the signal.
Yeah.
Because they were going to make sure that guy was going to stop and go abide by the rules. And that was against the policy.
Didn't they have certain signals here that they had test switches on them?
Switches. Right. Yeah, they usually found them where they got around a tree so that the officials could get behind the tree.
Yeah. Yeah. But back then, when they were out here testing us, of course, we always thought, well, they're out here trying to fire us. Well, in reality, in later years, I realized that they were just trying to train us, make better railroad people out of all of us.
Well, they were trying to get rid of a lot of the accidents that happen on stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of guys would do the shortcut deal and come up to a red signal and not really stop. And anyway, so you were in on a lot of those.
Yes.
And how about when you're changing out these signals that were bad ordered, I mean, bad order means they're not any good. There's something's wrong with them, and that's what the term bad order means. So
see, when they went, they changed profiles in the mainline signals, where it used to have some light get in there, and engineers couldn't see them. Well, first thing it got, come down the maintain, we'll have to realign them. And going through part of that, especially Guadalupe, where they have a lot of sand, the signals go out of focus. Well, we'd line them up on the rail because they had a little peep sight on it, and when the radios come in, had problem signals. Well, the locals, especially Guadalupe local, line up a signal, and when they come one way, I'd ask them, and of course, they always give me a rash about it wasn't focused right. Well, it was focused according to the book. That's all we could say, because there was a distance to do.
But I remember you asking me from time to time of how that signal was here or there or wherever.
And that, one of the old-time supervisors thought I was that guy that really was interested in giving the trainmen the lights, because that's the thing. Then they come in with different degree lenses, 30 degree, 40 degree, and 50, and then the 60 and 75 is on long curves. They have different degrees on the long curves.
Really?
Yes. And
God,
so,
I had no idea.
yeah, they had the glass, and it would be moved on the glass so it focus, and they had them so you can focus around curves. The hardest one I ever had was the east end of Guadalupe.
East end. The westbound signal?
Oh no, going eastbound.
Eastbound.
Come around the curve, and then you hit the bridge, and then you get a little tiny curve just at the south end of the bridge. Well, that was a hard signal all the time. So talked to my supervisor, which was one of the guy that really worked for the train service guys. He says, we had that 14-foot signal, so we went 16. Raised it above the railing of the bridge, and when you come out eastbound, you could see all the way around.
Right. Yeah, just a little difference.
Yeah, a lot of things. And then we had one guy come out of assistant signal supervisor come out of Arizona. He was going to really tear us a new pilot. He even had come with a straight edge and put on the column, see if the column was out. He tried to blame when he saw it. I says, well, the only thing we do is we loosen the bolts, raise it, and put some washers in it. Well, they didn't do that in the desert, he said. So I said, well, you're out here on the coast where the ground moved a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now with your job, of course, you were on the ground.
Yeah, I was on the ground.
See, I was always on the engine, usually up there with my feet on the heater, staying nice and warm, and you were out there doing the dirty work.
Dirty work, yes.
And I'm sure you must have had some encounters with a few critters out there from time to time.
Yes, most of our dealings is with cattle on the right-of-way.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the most prominent businessmen in San Luis Obispo, he used to be my gate man between Guadalupe and Casmalia. Nick Tompkins, his dad owned that nice place just west of Casmalia in the hole, that Hacienda Ranch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Casmalia. Yeah.
There was, and we started talking about sightings. I helped take a lot of sightings out of it. Casmalia.
And what was that spur that used to run up from the east end of Devon? Used to go back up to Shell.
Yeah, we call it that the Dow Chemical. The one that had the Y at Casmalia, west of Casmalia, they used to have a Y in there.
Yeah, see, that was gone when I got here.
And then you go up to Schumann, where you get the burnt rock. They used to have a different colored rock there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a dangerous place there because of that rock fence and downhill into the
and downhill into there, boy. That's where you'd be using lots of sand
Yeah.
going down there because once you start sliding, there's no stopping.
Yeah, there was an instant there. Got involved was they had a company working top of Schumann Hill, making roads for those new wells. There come
Okay.
along Mr. 98 and hit the rock come down and hit the side. And boy, that really scattered it. Then they come up. So by the time they got hold of me, I went out there and I told them what I was doing. And the superintendent of this outfit, he says, well, we call the U.S. Marshal, going to lock you, close this job up. And he says, you're not big enough. Well, I'm not big enough, but the company is. So here comes the U.S. Marshal out of Santa Maria, and he says, how do you know it was us? He says, you're the only equipment up there. Because if you remember, we used to have a slide fence, a little steel rock
exactly.
slide fence there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
yeah.
it broke that. And that there, when they used to, rock come down and hit that fence, we used to have to go back, and you couldn't jumper that on there because it had a special relay, and you had to go find the trouble. Well, a lot of it was above the ground wiring to get us out at night there.
So you talk about slide fences. Tell them what the reason for them being there. I mean, and how they're wired. And
they're a slide fence has a complete loop from one end to the other, and when that had little mercury contacts in those posts, and when those little mercury contacts would break, your signals go stop.
Okay.
You had to go find the post where it was hit.
Okay, now, and approaching the location of where the slide fence was,
You had deep plates.
The signals on each end had a triangle plate with the letter P on it.
In fact, if you want one, I got one in my backyard.
Well, this would be a good place to have it right here.
Yeah.
And maybe nobody's.
No, because when we replace these signals, they come out with a new plate.
Right.
And at one time, those our regular signals on a number on the signals was made in San Jose, and they were made out of lead.
Yeah.
Well, when these fishermen start coming out, they knew they were made out of lead, and a lot of them. Then they had to go to casting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so that's the idea on the slide fence, and then the signals that protected that area with a triangle with a letter P on it.
Same thing with your 10-degree curve down here at Price Canyon. It has, in the creek below the bridge, it's got a float in there. And if the water comes up too high, it raises that and it kicks off the contact.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why you had those P signals at the bridges.
On the approach to Tiber Curve.
And the trainmen were required to walk walk the bridge.
Yeah.
Another place where there's a Armandi Road, Price Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
You had a P signal there underneath it. Underneath it had a mercury contact underneath it, so when vehicles come in and hit that, it would jar that.
Okay. Yeah.
And when they have in the movement of eucalyptus trees, a local contractor in town, it wasn't enough just to put half the load on. He had to go a little higher. Well, he got wedged in there, and that's amongst the first time that I ever had to get underneath there. Underneath that Armandi Road Bridge, they have those metal rail underneath it, and we had one attached underneath there.
Wow.
And when those happened, you had to take a pickup or a ladder, and those country people out there almost had to have two people because you'd be on top of a car going down the road.
Well, that contractor appreciates you not using his name.
Yeah. And you know him too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll tell you.
And on a lot of your bridges, on the big bridges, trestles, they had P signals.
I remember I only had to walk a bridge once, and it was when I was over on Amtrak, that Martinez Bridge going over Suisun Bay, where all the ships are out there. We pulled up on Amtrak train number 11 going north. Had a red signal there at the bridge. We got permission to flag it, and the operator wanted to walk ahead because it had a P signal on it. So I got out there and tried to be brave, and that bridge it's got to be, what, a couple of 100 feet above the ocean there, or the bay.
Yeah, because bay, the ship goes.
Oh yeah, I mean, my God, looking down and the grates that they had on those bridges, you can see right through them.
Yeah.
And I'm tippy-toeing across there, expecting to see one of those sections not there.
Not there.
But God, that was, for me, that was a big deal for me in getting across it. But the reason that I was out walking it was I had a fireman that day, and so I let him run the engine or something, or it might have been a student engineer. And so the student engineer was running while the fireman was in the cab. Anyway, I was out walking and crazy. I wouldn't do that again. But another time, we're going to talk about earthquake incidents right now. While we're talking about Suisun Bay Bridge, we just left on another trip on Amtrak number 14. Yeah, 14 going eastbound. We had an earthquake about the time we were around Berkeley, a little bit west of or east of Berkeley. So we slowed down, dispatcher call, and then we flag all the way to Martinez. We get to Martinez. Then we got a highball out of Martinez, go out, pull up to the same bridge again. Of course, he had a red signal, and then we had to wait for almost an hour for a signal guy to show up. And he comes up and climbs up in the cab, and he says, well, check the bridge out. It's good to go. He says, you want to take it across? And I said, if I had my choice, I'd turn this train around and back it across instead of me going first, but we did. It was no big deal. But earthquakes, what's been your experiences with earthquakes around here? We've had plenty of them.
Well, like I say, this one at Price Canyon, it had an earthquake detector, and the only other time I had anything to do with earthquake was at where Granite is at Watsonville, north of Watsonville. Logan.
Yeah.
They had their earthquake detectors,
right,
because that's that. Right in that field.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so one time I was relieving. I wasn't too familiar with up there, so I went up there and red signals, of course, checked the earthquake detector relay, and one of them old guys out of that plant there, he come out and he says, "Oh, I know your trouble." I said, "What?" He said, "We just set off a charge."
Yeah.
So that brought on where we had 3 different earthquake detectors in that one at the bridge and one on each side.
Okay.
Because they when they set off a charge, they really set off a charge.
And that's for that quarry up there.
Yep, Granite.
Yeah, Granite's got a big quarry up there. Yeah.
And that was the only other place I.
Well, in 1952, they had the big earthquake over in Tehachapi, and they rerouted a lot of.
Yeah, on the coast.
That must have been a lot busier. You were seeing a lot of stuff going on for that. Had all the Santa Fe traffic over here, and my only other earthquake experience, and I wasn't involved in it, but it was a freight train that's leaving, had left Santa Barbara, had about, God, I don't know, 50, 60 cars, something like that. And they had an earthquake, and Santa Barbara operator left Bacon, remember him? And of course they were trying to get a hold of the train that had just left. Well, back then, you know, the radios weren't very good, you know. He never did get a hold of them. And so they're going up the hill into Elwood. And once you get to Elwood, you're slowing down for, God, I think that was a 50-mile-an-hour curve, a right-hand curve. All green signals. He gets around the curve and looks ahead, and those tracks were all spaghettied. on both rails, they were all spaghettied. Some way, somehow, they got the engines over and dumped about, it seems to me it was like 38 cars or something darn thing. I don't know, you might remember that incident or not, but those things happen, those earthquakes. And then the washouts, any washout stories?
Washouts, you ought to tell the washouts. You're involved with one.
Actually had a couple of them. One time I was on a work train during the winter time when things had gone to heck, which it does very often. When we were getting our normal rainfall years, all that from Surf all the way to, actually all the way to almost to Ventura. It's pretty shaky country down there. But so I had this load of riprap behind me, and I'm just leaving the siding Tangier, which is just north of Surf, Railroad West. So just leaving, look up, the signal just about go by, all green signals, all of a sudden it goes yellow. Pull on down the hill, next signal's red, so stop and flag on down to the bridge there at Surf, and there was no bridge. It was washed out. Nothing there. That's why you're taking it easy when you're flagging these signals, you know. And the other incident was down there at milepost 355.5 just east of Naples. There used to be a siding in Naples down there, and there was another time I was on a work train at night. We had stopped at Surf to get orders, and things had just gone crazy that night because the railroad they were having washouts all over and slides. And so while we were in the office getting orders from the operator, we got a phone call from a signal maintainer, one of your partners, and he calls up and said, well, we got a washout at 355.5. So we go ahead and take off and head for 355.5, and as we're getting close, you know, I'm watching these mileposts real close, and we get down to that where the signal was at the east end of Naples. Stop and flag by that one, and sure enough, all greens. Excuse me, we didn't flag that signal because it was all green. The signals were all green. But nevertheless, when I went by that signal, I had a train pinched down, and because we were expecting to see a washout, and sure enough, there was. The rails were just hanging out there, and it must have been 100 feet across, and the rails were just laying there. So, good thing the signal maintainer was out there.
Yeah, he lived there at Naples.
Oh, he did?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, imagine hitting that thing at speed, you know, you'd be all over, you know. And like Frank Jackson, remember Frank Jackson dumped that
Capitan.
At the east end of Capitan.
You got some beautiful pictures of that in slides.
You do?
Yep. Where the old engines lay out. And Ernie, the conductor, he went to Alaska. He got his payoff and went to Alaska.
And then Andy Flory was a head brakeman there, and he was riding in the last unit of a covered wagon, and he says, "Oh my God," he says, "I thought I was dead." He says, "The cars were flying all over, but some way, somehow," and that was on the Zipper 373, the hot train from L.A. to San Francisco. And but they were lucky to get over that. And all
Ano-
those
Yeah.
brand
Another washout, I was on the east end of Sicady,
East End of Sicady.
just before the bridge.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
God,
Where
yeah.
they
Oh,
kept
yeah.
going.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We were sitting there, fiber optic was wanting to put fiber through there and looking around. So went up to my pickup up on the top. All at once, our soap, just like that. I looked down there,
Gone.
gone. The switch is gone. The switch is gone. And it was a slide. Now, I don't know if they ever straightened that curve out or not. They talked about it, but
No, they shortened the siding up.
oh, that was it.
They
yeah.
shortened the siding up, but everything else is there. But oh yeah, that's
That was. I hated that bridge because you come right off you come right off a curve onto the bridge.
right. Exactly.
Who engineered that job? I wasn't thinking too much.
Yeah, that when you leave Sicady around the left-hand curve,
Yeah.
then you make a right-hand curve, and then the bridge is right
the bridge
there.
is right looking
Right
at
there.
you. And then that's the same canyon, what they call Our Caliente, where they have hot springs on that up that canyon on the Hollister
no,
Ranch.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
No. Another washout deal I just thought about, and you were probably there too. At the top of the hill at Schumann, they had a
Oh,
washout there,
yeah.
and I was coming west on a freight train, and of course we were flagging down. We had all kinds of form Ys and stuff like that, train orders, and so they said, well, come on over, and I'm looking ahead down there, and I swear to God, you could see between the ties, you could see there was nothing. I mean, nothing. And I forget who in the heck told us to go across, and they let us go across at walking speed.
Walking speed, yeah.
And you had to be there.
Well, I was so damn many that I'm just starting to think that. But just around the curve after the Highway 1, you come out by Air Rocks and you come out, and you start to get on that right away, had a big washout there.
Yeah, that's the one right there. It's a left-hand curve
Yeah.
as you're leaving
Yeah.
Schumann there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Walter Brothers took that job, and they had trying to work along with tracks and all, and we had a assistant train master, some little pipsqueak guy. Felt like a man. I could look right over his shoulders.
Bob Wolf?
Yeah. Yeah. He come out and he says, well, you know what are you doing? And Walters had 2 8s and a 6, and they were pumping that pipe underneath the track.
Wow.
And he come along and says, I'm not going to run no train over. It's all right. Well, and I used to be an assistant division engineer, if you ever knew him, Bill Sutherland, quite an Irish guy. He says, well, I think I could do that. He says, I'll get up that engine and run it. And that assistant or train master, he went on to surf as an operator, I guess, later on.
Yeah, Lynn, the heck's his name? But anyway, yeah.
Well, we've been through so many that our time, but that was still in existence. I was involved because I was a maintainer from San Luis to Waldorf, and Mahon was a roadmaster, and he says, "Go on to surf." And here I went by there and looked down there, and there's no towpath at all.
No.
And I could see the water washing underneath
No,
that.
no,
That's it. This is
that
it.
was a big one there.
Then when I-
yeah.
I asked the operator to put a stop order on it. You can't do that. I said, put a stop order on it. So he got on, asked the dispatcher if I could put a stop order. He says, he's the man that's out there authorized to
There
do
you
it.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That
yeah.
operator didn't want to put a stop order.
Yeah,
Just think of a guy coming around that curve and
Yeah, that was a bad one too. And I'm not kidding you. I'm surprised they let us even walk us over there
Yeah.
because we had, like
Yeah.
75, 80, 85 cars or whatever. But crazy out there.
yeah, we're talking about the slide fences. Another one's up here at Squirrel Point.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
They got a big one there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's
6-8 foot.
it's a
high,
long
yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a long one.
Yeah.
And when I was relieving out of San Luis here, they called me one night to go up there. Okay. So went up there and checked the relays. They were popped open. Start walking around. A big old buck had come off that hill and right into the slide fence and set it off.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, that there was a lot of deer crossing through there, and it was set off by them.
Oh,
And of
yeah.
course, kids on motorcycles too. Yes,
I'm surprised that big buck got by Tartaglia.
yeah. Well, and the other can't think of his name. Martinez,
George.
yeah, George's kids. 'Cause
Yeah.
they were like fleas on that side
Oh, yeah.
down there.
Yeah, they knew where all the big bucks are hanging out. But yeah, a lot going on. Now, how about you were here during the steam days early, and there had to be some incidents involving the turntable here. When I mean,
The turntable there.
you ever see any engines down in the pit?
No, but I've seen a car.
Oh, okay.
One of those 69 or 80 some of those big things. Bob Betts, he used to be our maintenance mechanic.
Well, we had a Bob Beck that was a brakeman here for
No,
years.
this is different. He's out on.
Oh.
And he called me up and said, "Hey, you better come on out, look what's on." He said, "Why?" He said, "Oh, we hear all this commotion here." So Isabel and I got pickup, drove down there, and here was this car into the pit because it flooded in there, and they come around where the old sand house was, come across there. Well, why go around by the old roundhouse when we cut across?
Oh, an automobile. You're
Yeah.
talking, oh, yeah, yeah.
And they say that lady, when the cops and all was there, says the lady asked her husband if she took the key out of the switch of the car because the headlights were still on.
Yeah, crazy. But nothing, no engines in the pit, though.
No, I've never seen an engine in the pit.
Because up in the Bay Area, I know they had a couple of incidents up there and out of Bayshore.
Yeah.
They had some engines in the pit down there, but, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And what used to amaze me about this here before they put the electric motor on it, were those guys had the big old crank, and they had a 6-8 foot high gears in there. And then later years they put an electric motor on, a big electric
But they used to
motor.
be air powered
Yeah,
originally.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be darn. Now the scale track that used to be out here, I was on what, 7 track?
Yeah, it's way over there, yeah.
Yeah. And we used to do a lot of weighing.
Yeah,
Weighing.
weighing cars down there.
What were we weighing? I don't even remember, but
Most was chrome out of the chrome mines at
up on the hill here?
up on the hill. Yeah, they used to.
I'll be darned, yeah.
I remember when the story used to go when they first started. Well, that's rock. We just load her up. Well, no, it didn't work that way because chrome was so heavy.
Yeah, I'll be darned, yeah.
A lot of people don't realize we had this chrome mill out here at the Gold Tree either for the years.
Gold Tree, yeah. I'll be darned.
And then we go back to these old sidings, like Penveer, just west of King City. They had a creamery out there.
Mets?
No, on this side of Metz. Just outside of King City. They had the beach spur going into the beach, and just north of that.
Oh, God, yeah. Elsa. That was a beach spur there at Elsa.
Yeah, but this was beyond Elsa, between Metz
And Elsa.
and Elsa, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, they had a big creamery there at one time.
Wow. There was a lot of dairy and stuff going on
Yes.
all the way up the valley. And
You know, they come back about the sugar beets. When they used to bring the sugar beets and come off the hill and come into San Luis, all that smoke, everybody. I bet the police department would get croaked up on calls that the train's on fire.
And the other interview that I did, I think I mentioned that one day had a 85 cars of beets, had a helper out of Margarita, but the dispatcher wanted me to stop at Serrano and cut the helper off. I'm thinking, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, so the helper cuts off, comes back, couples up to the caboose, and it's to help hold the train so I can get a full charge on the train before he leaves Serrano, because Serrano, where you're stopping there with a beet train, the beet trains aren't long, but they're short and heavy, and it's just all straight track. I mean, you're talking about an e-ticket ride, you know. So I got a good charge on the train, and pulled the pin, he backed away, and I got like 18 pounds, 16, 18 pounds of air, and just let him start taking off. And I rode that set all the way down to San Luis, and we get down around on the flat spots up there on the hill. It's not all downhill up there on the hill. There's several flat spots, and so you be careful about going out of dynamic to where you got the train's all bunched up, and then go into power. Then you want to stretch the train out, but I was afraid to release the brakes, because once you get going,
never stop.
You're gone, buddy. We got into San Luis. It was a Sunday morning. I swear to God, you couldn't even see the back of the train. I mean, it's just, I'm sure the switchboards were lighting up. But anyway, moving on here. Water spout incidents. I wasn't around during the steam, but I remember my dad telling me he fell in the water tank on an engine down at Surf one night when he was watering up one of those steam engines, and got good and soaked. But he's lucky he didn't get hurt, you know, falling down there. But and we're talking about the weather at Point Arguello, and that's where the siding. There used to be an old siding, Arlite there. Arlite. Didn't they have
They had a quarry there.
Right.
They had a quarry. I had pictures of that, and I loaned it to somebody up in Watsonville, and never saw them again. On the left-hand side, going eastbound, left-hand side, they had 2 rails going in there, and they had a big electric shovel.
Really?
To scoop it up, dump it on down. And they said that store, Ralph Santini, he was one of the guys, the last guy I knew that worked there. They had, on the right side, on the ocean side, they had 2 spurs. They had one to park the engine, and then this is stories from my uncle, A.B. Sandus. Remember him?
Socks?
I don't know what you guys call him, A.B. Sandus.
No, I'm thinking of Sock Souza.
No, this is A.B. Sandus.
I remember A.B. Sandus.
Yeah, big, heavy set guy.
Yeah.
He said they'd have coffee in there at that outfit car, and this operator, that big shovel, it was electric, wasn't steam, electric, and he says he couldn't keep a oiler on there, because when they dig out there, rattlesnakes be coming down the
I'm not surprised. And
he says he couldn't keep it, but he says that the big move for Arlite was when they were building some out through the desert, New Mexico, Arizona, through there, and they were taking this stuff out there to build some of the rail, to keep from getting into the sand. There's quite a story there. Too bad Ralph Santini's not living. He could tell you, because he lived in one of those outfit cars. He was a B&B guy out there.
But Arlite, I remember that's where the big bucks used to hang out. And being deer hunters and poachers and outlaws, and of course you always knew where the big bucks were, but usually November, December of every year, those big bucks, that time of the year, the deer in this country, the bucks all gather up in December, and God, used to see some huge bucks down there.
Well, the biggest bucks I ever saw is between east of Conception to, used to be a little there at Drake, where the old that's when I knew that ranch foreman. In fact, Chrissy we still call one of that. She has the whole Halama. She's the boss of the whole Halama outfit. She was her maiden name was Rodriguez. Her dad was section foreman at Sudden for years and years, and she went to school with some of that bunch.
Rodriguez.
Yeah. A Mexican name. Yeah, so.
You sure they weren't Portuguese?
Nope, they had a Z on them.
Okay. Okay.
But said that there, well, like at Sudden, let's see, there was 6 or 7 families living in Sudden at one time.
Yeah, see
the maintainer, they used to have a maintainer right there at Sudden.
And so all that stuff was gone. The siding was there when I was here, but there used to be.
A lot of these guys coming along before the camp got locked up good. They come around with it that's when Geiger counters first come out, looking for old relics around one of the buildings.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I could tell you a story about
metal detectors. Yeah.
Yeah, I could tell you a story about it at Antonio.
Oh yeah.
They were used to family Silveras there at Santa Maria, but they're related to your wife's part of the clan.
Silveras?
Yeah, Frankie Silvera.
I'll have to.
Yeah. I think Frankie's my age, so he'd be about the only one living because the rest of them are all gone.
Wow.
But I'm going out there, and I had a friend that was a bottle collector. So I remember there used to be an old house here. Started going around. I went around. I had about 2 or 3 bottles in one pile, and I went around a bush and started looking. There was a big old jai, just all ready for me. I said, the bottles could stay. I'd never been back there.
Big what?
Rattlesnake.
Oh my God! Yeah, yeah.
Those were big.
Yeah.
Sapple Webb.
Oh yeah.
What? I'm trying to think of that sighting. It was just above Casmalia, on the Antonio.
Well,
That
Antonio was just east of Casmalia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On top of the hill.
You're right. Yeah.
He was on a light engine, and we had to get in the clear for him. So his cousin Milton Padalini was on my crew. So I was running the motor car coming around there, and I saw Milton shook his hands up like that. He killed a rattlesnake wrapped around the handle. Milton went out to grab that, and there was that waiting for him.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, Sapple Webb. He was an engineer, worked out of San Luis here. Good friend of mine, too. He was a great guy.
When we were kids, we used to go up. His daughter,
Donna,
she lives here in town, but she still got the cabin up there. She will not sell hers.
They just sold it.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. Right off the press. We got some hot news for you. They sold it back to Hearst because that's what Sapple wanted when it looked like nobody in the family was interested in hunting or anything back there. They had, I don't know how many acres, not very many.
No. But it was a heck of a place, down the hole.
Right.
We used to always say down the hole.
Yeah, and I got a great picture down the hole with Ernie Block and Sappo and Frank Ruda.
Oh, yeah.
John Scurry.
Yeah. Rudy's in bad shape, his son.
Yeah.
He lives over the hill.
Rudy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's up there now.
Yeah.
Right, he's close to.
He and I are the same age.
Are you?
Yep.
And I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, talk about Osa Street, right here, Osa Street. Back in the steam days, they had 2 yard jobs here, around the clock. One on the east end, which would be on the south end of Osa Street, and one on the west end. And they had, and you were telling me earlier that they had a flagman.
Flagman on San Luis side.
On the San Luis side. Yeah.
And they had a place there for him, and then the old ice house.
The ice house. Where was that? Was that on?
Yeah, for the train service.
Okay.
That's right behind Bob's shack.
Oh, okay. Okay, right there. Wow. So, and the idea was that, because you can imagine all the switching back and forth, and helpers cutting in and out, but that I do have a picture of that with the engine stopped short of on the east end of Osa Street. And so you remember the guys that were
finally hit old man Delgado. He was the guy with the broom sweeping the flangeways.
for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
The flanges.
flanges going across all the tracks there.
For crying out loud.
I forget how many tracks there. It was a whole bunch.
Well, there was 7 sets of tracks there, right?
Yeah.
Plus.
And he's the flagman. That's Bob Phillips was his last name.
Yeah,
He was a guy, and that'd be the most boring job if I ever had. He'd sit in there and he'd flag the crossing. If the trains are coming, he'd stop the cars and all.
Yeah.
And if they were, they didn't make up the train because they had an air hose, air pipe underneath the crossings, and they'd hook up to the air there. From one train back up, hook on, the other guy would hook on, and then pump up, open up, pump up the trains to take out.
And the reason they did that was so they could do the air test from the head end up here on the west end, and the caboose would be clear down there at the east end by the junkyard down there or wherever. But that way you have continuity to make the proper air test.
I remember times, a lot of times they'd have the special agent around school time because they'd go along and pull pins.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Train get ready to go. In emergency.
Yep.
Then they have the crossing blocked.
Yeah.
And then you have people start tooting horns. So.
God, crazy. The kids weren't any different back then than they are now.
I think they're worse.
Yeah.
They remember better.
Yeah. Now, some of the guys that we had working around here that I remember, the switchman, there was a guy by the name of McCarthy. He was famous for drawing. God, he was. I wish somebody had saved some of those drawings or taken pictures of them or whatever. But whenever they'd have any downtime or spot time in the shanty there, he'd be in there drawing cartoons, you know, and he was really good at it. Another switchman we had here, Donald Q. Miller. He was a
city councilman
here, and a darn good railroad guy. And Chris, remember Ed Christensen?
Ed Christensen, he was a assistant. Well, he ended up as at one time as a yard master.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that was after Gandy.
Yeah.
And another incident that I remember, it was kind of funny. I was working the Lompoc local off of the extra board here in San Luis, and I was working on the Lompoc job with a brakeman that I won't name.
Yeah.
And we were talking and everything, and he was saying that. He said, well, tomorrow I'm going on vacation. I said, where are you going? He said, well, I'm going to go up into Oregon and Washington. And I said, well, good. Well, anyway, so at the end of the shift, he said, well, okay, we'll see you later. Have a good vacation. And so I got released from that job, and so I deadheaded back to San Luis and marked up when I got back here that night. The next morning, I got called for a helper to help a train over the hill, and so I'd brought the engines out of the roundhouse, and we're sitting up there over on the lead, and the SF comes in, and we were going to help. That's the SF merchandise. We were going to help him. So the SF starts pulling out of town, and I don't know, 10 or 15 miles an hour on the main line, and seen a guy coming, flat car coming with 2 people on it. Sure enough, it was a brakeman that I was working with, him and his girlfriend. They're going on vacation on the SF merchandise, going up into Northern California someplace, or Oregon. So I never forgot that. I always thought that SF merchandise was a really hot train, and during the war, after Vietnam, and during it, that's where they'd put all their bombs and
Yeah.
explosives on that particular train. And whenever you'd go to work, besides getting your register check and everything else, you'd have a piece of paper that'd tell you how many cars of explosives
Yeah.
and bombs that you'd have. Sometimes it'd be 60 or 70 cars of bombs, you know.
In the box, the cars.
And they'd on their way to Roseville, where they blew up
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah, Roseville.
Yeah, yeah.
My niece, well, she got a new garage out of it.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, one of them pieces. She lived right near the
Wow.
track. Went through the garage. So
I was up at the Cal Expo, the fairgrounds there. That was during my sheep herding
Yeah.
days, and we were selling rams that day at the fairgrounds, and all of a sudden we heard all these explosions going off. I mean, it was loud even in Sacramento. And of course, in later years, I found what exactly.
when that happened here at San Luis, at the dispatcher's office, if the guy in San Francisco would plug in and put his foot on the release, just so these guys could hear him popping.
Really?
Right here at San Luis.
Wow. Yeah.
See, we used to have round-the-clock dispatchers there at San Luis at one time.
Yeah.
In fact,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
there's a big cable underneath that track that lead that I didn't get out after is still in the ground.
Still in there.
Still in there.
Polluting the ground.
Yeah. And then we had that, if you remember, just beyond the coal house down here on the last track, where they put the cabooses and we used to call it the coal house because it had coal, and they had guys around the clock when the cabooses come in, dump the coal and fill the box up on the.
Wow. Yeah. Over there on the cab track there. Yeah. Wow. And during the war, and you saw a lot of these troop trains used to come through. They had a lot of, they used to call them main trains, but they were actually troop trains, bringing troops in to Camp Cook, which is now Vandenberg, and then Camp San Luis, and then Camp Roberts.
At Nacimiento. Remember the sighting at Nacimiento? Or that was before?
Come on, I'm not that old. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah,
But
I have a picture of that, they used to call it a station. It wasn't a station. It was a lean-to like. And when they started that museum at Camp Roberts, a guy named Mervyn Dixon, he used to be a fire captain here in town. He was telling us, I says, yeah, I got a picture. Used to be a sighting up there. No, there never was a sighting. Never was. Well, I proved it was wrong. Now you can go up there.
you can see where the sighting was.
Yeah, where your sighting was.
Yeah.
But a guy named Bill Parker, which is gone, they had 85-foot poles up there. So raised above the tower now. One time, one of the assistant supervisors come on and says, yeah, he says, you guys think you're hotshot climbers. He said, oh, we're going to put you on a job. I went about 40 feet and with saws to cut so that drop so it wouldn't the line after everything closed up. And Bill Parker, he got a kind of shaky like. He says, Portuguese, I don't think I'm going to go up there. I think I'm going to quit. I said, come on, Bill, come on. I said, the only thing we do, we'll make old man Travis feel bad because you're going to have to get some rope so we can tie that and the ground crew could pull it so it won't fall on us.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have chainsaws to do that, or Armstrong?
Yeah, Armstrong saws.
Armstrong saws.
Yeah,
Okay.
That place we cut the poles there, and then later on was down here at the Dow Chemicals there at Casmadia, where it had the Y in there. They used to have a chemical plant back there. So that was before the camp.
Yeah. There used to be a sighting. You used to go back to Shell plant, and early on, those tracks were still there. We were taking cars, we were picking cars up.
You talk you talk about Hathaway siding. It used to be there.
First siding west of town.
West of town, and just beyond the end of the palm trees, they had a spur in there. We used to call it her spur.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember that spur being there. Yeah.
And that's the big thing. Hearst would bring a private car in there, and all these big cars back and forth. And did you ever remember Cliff Price, C.T. Price? He was a signalman out of the shop here.
No.
He took a motor car. He was going to go up the hill, and took a motor car. And somebody stopped him, and this guy come out and he says, "I want you to take this lady for a motor car ride." He says, "Well, I can't do it." He said, "Well, what do I have to do?" He said, "Well, you have to talk to a guy named Charlie Neal." "Oh, you don't have to worry about it. You see, he's a friend of mine." It was old man Hearst, and he wanted Marion Davis to take that motor car ride.
Oh, for crying out loud!
At that time.
Yeah.
That's a big feature of old Clifton T. Price. Yeah, but that's siding there. Good thing it is now there, because it just got. I even helped take the wigwag out of that crossing at Hathaway.
Is that the one in your backyard?
No,
Okay.
no. That is probably up at King City.
Yeah. Yeah, that Hathaway siding now would be
Oh,
a mess out there with Cal Poly, the
Yeah,
way
yeah.
Cal Poly's gotten
Well, it
big.
is now. Look, they put up that nice fence there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Look at that, what a stupidity. They come in there, they made the company put the fence in there, and the city come 10 feet outside that and put another fence.
No.
You can see that out there.
That's our old neighborhood out there. You lived on
Stafford, I live across the California.
I lived on the
So,
other side of
yeah.
the tracks, on the poor side
Yeah.
over there, on Stenner Street.
Yeah. Used to come as far as Hathaway with Ida Street. And when they built the freeway,
Ida, yeah.
they
God.
made it California all the way across.
And then one of your cohorts lived over there too, right on the corner. Gleason, he was a signal maintainer.
I bought his house when he left. Dave Gleason, the communication man. I'm right next door to him.
Oh, you are? Because I went to school with
David or Mike?
Dave.
Well, Mike lives here back. The youngest one lives just up on Longview. So.
Amazing. We know, been around a while.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
growing up here, you knew everybody, and San Luis is so different. But anyway, we talked about the troop trains and all that. Nicknames, all the different nicknames of all the guys that we worked with.
Well, that was on the rail department. We were common people.
You mean you're calling us uncommon people? We had, there was one guy who was a really good friends and with my dad and mom. It was Gabby Nelson.
Oh, Nelson, yeah.
And that's
The kids.
Danny and Doug's father.
Yeah.
His nickname was Gabby. Then there was Squeaky Millsaps.
Yeah.
You remember him?
Yeah.
And Turdhead, Luster.
No, I didn't.
You remember him? Yeah, he was worked at West End a lot. Then Lion Tamer, Ed Gilmet. The preacher, we all know who that was.
That was one of your buddies.
He'd get up, my buddies.
Well, I went to school with him, so.
As soon as he'd get on that engine, he'd have his Bible out and start until he got cut off. And another guy was Drawbar, and then Nuts and Bolts. You remember Nuts and Bolts? Rattlesnake, Sheepherder, that was me. Cloud9, who got that nickname, he was a conductor on a train here, a local out of San Luis. Only one thing, he picked up the wrong cars. Picked up the east cars off of one track, and they got up there on the hill and realized what they'd done. They had to bring them back to San Luis. And Starchy, Starchy Pilot.
Yeah, the best dressed railroad man you ever saw.
Boy, you'd never.
Necktie, bow necktie.
White shirt, the whole deal.
Suit,
and
shine shoes.
And had his caboose. Of course, in those days, each conductor had his own caboose.
Yeah.
And boy, his caboose, I never was inside of
Yeah.
it. He was probably pretty anal about keeping everything clean. But and another guy we had was, he was switchman or brakeman. His name was Tanglefoot.
Mm.
He might have had trouble staying on,
Yeah.
staying vertical,
Yeah.
you know. And then Poolside, you remember Poolside? Bob Nagel?
Oh, Nagel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nagel, that's Chuck.
Oh, he Chuck's
Chuck's kids.
kid.
Yeah, and they were, talking about a good railroad family. It
Yeah.
was Chuck Nagel and his Bob,
Bob,
and then Danny.
Danny's slipped the rocks toward his last of his lives.
Yeah, but really top quality
Yeah,
railroad guys.
I knew the father when he was on the Lompoc local for years.
Oh yeah, I worked with him.
Yeah,
Yeah, many times. Yeah, Chuck. Yeah, and then Studley, and then Snuffy Horn.
Yes. I'll tell you a story about Snuffy Horn. I was standing along when they were arguing out there at the East Switch of San Luis Obispo. Come around the curve, just east of Price Canyon, that curve coming in.
Mm-hmm.
A set of wheels jumped the rail, and he drug it all the way and hit the spring switch. And it didn't. They were arguing with him.
Spring switch up here at the east end of San Luis?
The other one, further one, the first one out in the country, out there by Country Club.
Oh, that's when they had double track out there. See, that was before my time, but that's when there was double track down to where the Pacific Coast Railroad crossed, right there.
In fact, I just got a picture of the tower at Hadley.
Wow.
Yeah. He drug that thing all up to the spring switch at what we call now East San Luis out here. And it was Podfoot, Charlie Neal, and one of the assistants was arguing there that he had to sign a thing, a break-in tube. Snuffy, that wouldn't, it never broke into.
Yeah.
He drugged that guy, and Proudfoot looked at Charlie Neal. He says, "Well, you're going to have to back up on that."
Okay. Oh yeah, Snuffy. Always had a big wad of snuff in his mouth.
And the dirtiest magazines all the time.
Okay.
I remember Joe Goad, who used to be the roundhouse foreman.
Yeah.
As soon as that engine hit there, he'd go through to get the nasty magazines out of there.
God, yeah. Yep, I swear. Joe, he's over there at Margarita still.
No, he died.
Oh, he did die?
Yeah, he died.
Wow. Yeah,
Screwy Louie is the only one left.
Yeah, I see Louie every once in a while too. Louie and Tony Dominguez and a great bunch of guys that we had working up here, and the crew clerks and Chester and
the old fart.
Yeah. Chester and Tony and Eva.
And then there was he's got a cleaning service here in town. I can't think of his name. He was one of the clerks up here. About my size.
Then
he's an American Legion guy, that's right.
And then Garner, what was his name? Bob?
Dick Gardner.
Oh, Dick Garner.
Yeah, his nephew was on that.
His nephew was one of the guys that got killed up there on
the tunnel.
Tunnel 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that well. Well, I'm kind of running out of things.
Yeah, you kind of rack B. Okay, boss, I guess we're through.
We're done, huh?
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, this place here,
Well, I will say that I'm really glad that these people are doing all this and preserving all this, because this is history.
Too bad that didn't leave the ramp in the back here, but it was so rotten.
Yeah. Too bad they didn't leave the roundhouse.
Yeah, or the turntable.
Or the turntable. I mean, what was SB thinking? I mean, can you imagine?
Well, SB wasn't thinking at one time. SP, I can remember this goes back to Gus Holmberg, Charlie Neal, I forget who the other guy was. They were wanting to be able to take a spur right from up here and go down in the Y there Osis and Santa Barbara, they wanted to put an engine down there at one time like Santa Clara had.
Oh, really?
City of San Luis turned it down.
Crazy. Boy.
SP was going to build a spur down there and all. That would have been something.
And one thing, you got to hand it to Union Pacific, which is now taking everything over here, but they preserved a few of their steam engines, you know, and Southern Pacific, they let them all go bye-bye, you know.
Junkyard special.
And the only one left is a cab forward up there at Sacramento, and yeah.
I've got
One of the GSs that one of the daylight.
Yeah, the 4449, they've kept that. Yeah. And then they got the 2472 and the 2467, I think.
Yeah, they have one in Santa Clara at the
But beyond that, all those you know, like the 4300s, you know, and the 4300s and 4400s, I remember my dad telling me that those were his favorite engines to fire.
Yeah.
And he liked both of those engines. But he fired all the other big engines that they had, the 5000s, that were the 410-2s. And
yeah, I can remember the daylight engines out just west of Price Canyon. You'd see the guy on the tender, see the fireman on the tender, and they poke a rod down there or bring the rod out. That's when they used to count on that, the burning of the oil and all that.
Yeah, they got rewarded for saving fuel. They'd have a special...
My uncle used to tell old Snuffy, he says, don't take it all the way down. Don't take it all the way down. That's how they get. Yeah, he's...
Yeah, it's a totally different deal, I mean...
Yeah, there's a man that killed himself, that donkey.
Yep.
Not drinking, had cancer, and they told him not to go back on an engine. What did he do? Go up to San Jose and get on a switcher, the worst thing they could do.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were fortunate to be here during some good times and got to know a lot of the old timers here. And like when I first started out, you know, a lot of those old timers were still working here.
Yeah.
And they were, some of them were a grumpy bunch. Oh my God.
When I first went to work, old Heine Knudsen, the maintainer, hell's that ranch here at Santa Barbara? Naples.
Hollister Ranch?
No, that Mosby's, this oil company at Naples. Hey, when I first come to work for him, there was H.G. Knudsen, top of the seniority roster. I'd tell some of the guys, I'll never see that when I get there. Well, I hit the top, all right. I got up there. But it's a lot of... The only thing that bothers me now, I never kept one of the seniority rosters in my collection of junks, of signal maintainers.
That's what my wife... All of my stuff, I call it memorabilia.
Yeah.
She calls it junk, just like you. You Portuguese people are all alike.
Oh, yeah. Buy it, save it. Yeah, that's it.
So, Sid, you were a signal maintainer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my last 10 years is on the missile firing at Vandenberg. I went down there in the first firing, and number 5 or 6 firing, they had down there an Atlas. They had blew up.
Big boys.
Yeah, that was the big boys.
Yeah, the Atlas.
And a piece about the size of top of a car landed on the east switch at Surf. And parts of it
on the east switch at Surf.
Yeah, and parts of it went down to Baroda and Post, where that big cooler is now. And the Air Force couldn't get enough guys out there, and people would pick up some of that metal that was burning yet. Yeah, I call it burning. It was sulfur burning, acid burning, and put it in their cars for a souvenir right through the floorboard.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I remember one day I was coming west on 99. That's when they had We had a freight engine on the point. They were
Yeah.
running those 3200s. And just before getting into surf, I happened to turn around and look at the train on that right-hand curve, and shoot, there goes a missile right over, damn near over the top of the train. You know, of course, they weren't supposed to let that happen.
Yeah. The only guy I could tell you, really, he's probably dead now, Bradshaw.
Oh, Roe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Roe
was at
Bradshaw.
Tangier when that thing, and he
Yeah.
says, he tried to hang on to the engine. He says you couldn't find a place that wouldn't stay still.
Really?
The roaring and the
Jeez.
concussion of it.
Gravity. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I spent, in fact, I still got my pass of Vandenberg, non-restricted. I was the boss
Oh,
of the
to
base.
Vandenberg?
Yep.
Wow.
Many nights I got stopped out there by these.
We could have gone in there, gone some deer hunting. We could have killed some good bucks.
Yeah. Well, the biggest deer hunting I'd want to do is Easter Conception. Boy, that is.
I always thought, I talked about it earlier about at Arlight.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not kidding you, boy. I've seen so many good bucks down there.
Were you working there at Easter Conception? Trying to think of it now. Little hole down there where they dug big trenches for when the oil company was going to put a big thing down there for movement of the ground and all.
No.
NATO. They had a little sign out that says NATO, NATO. And
God, I don't remember that.
that was probably before your time. Just like that deal of Duffy. I helped him move one time.
Duffy?
Yeah, train master.
No, I
Merv
don't remember
Duffy.
Duffy. Duffy was gone the
no,
time I got
uh,
here. No.
He was involved with that Shriner thing, that Drake, that time. And he had a lot of the granite off the side of those things. And when we moved up, when they moved those train master, they'd have a boxcar come for their stuff. That thing was just full of
Memorabilia.
memorabilia. He took off those cars.
Crying out loud.
I remember the instance right here at this roundhouse. Something was wrong with a daylight car. They had to set it out here, and somebody stole
China and
just a coffee pot.
coffee pot.
They restricted these guys. I bet they had putting all those carmen in the roundhouse. They had subpoenas to go to check their house,
Oh,
but
no
never
kidding.
did find it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Memorabilia.
In fact, I got some. What I wanted to do is get the first stone was put up in the roundhouse. The first guy we lost in Korea, they had his name on it. There's two of them on there. And you know, of digging around with fiber optic, that plaque is someplace in the city of San Luis, or unless somebody took it other places.
No kidding. Wow.
Steve Whiteman was a roundhouse foreman at that time.